The door chain rattles against its metal track as they try to force their way in. My heart doesn't race anymore, not like it would have in the past. At 55, I finally learned that the thundering in my chest isn't fear. It's righteous indignation finding its voice. Elaine, open this door immediately. My mother's voice, still imperious at 75, cuts through the hallway of my apartment building. It's Thanksgiving, for heaven's sake. Behind the narrow opening secured by the chain, I see them, Martha Martin, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite her obvious agitation. Richard, my father, looking uncomfortable but determined. And behind them both, my younger brother Thomas, 48 years old but still hiding behind our parents like a teenager caught smoking. I was explicitly clear in my email. I say, my voice steady. The bill for damages remains unpaid. You are not welcome here until it is. This is ridiculous. Mother huffs. We're family. You can't just. The door across the hall opens, and Mary Johnson peers out. At 78, she's been my neighbor longer than some marriages last. Her eyes, sharp despite her age, take in the scene with practiced efficiency. Oh, Elaine dear, she says, her voice carrying clearly down the hallway. I meant to tell you, I saw your parents dropping Thomas and his friends off at your lake house that weekend. Quite the rowdy bunch they were. The silence that follows is absolute. Mother's mouth opens and closes without sound. Father's face drains of color. Thomas looks as though he's desperately searching for an escape hatch in the hallway floor. And I feel it, the final piece sliding into place. The sweet taste of vindication. My life, at 55 years old, was about to become truly my own. The discovery 2 months earlier, the stench hit me before I even turned the key, a sour, sickly sweet miasma of stale beer, cigarette smoke, and something worse. My hand froze on the doorknob of my lakeside retreat, the sanctuary I'd spent 15 years creating after my divorce. This weekend was supposed to be my reward for shepherding Harrington's memoir through its final edits. The book had consumed 6 months of my life as editor-in-chief. Just 3 days of peace and quiet, I thought. Was that too much to ask at my age? I pushed the door open, and my stomach plummeted to my feet. The living room I'd so carefully decorated was decimated. The cream-colored sofa, the one I'd splurged on after my promotion 5 years ago, had been disemboweled, foam innards spilling from knife slashes across its cushions. My coffee table, a cherished antique I'd restored during those lonely months after my divorce, bore a jagged crack along its surface. The walls, painted in that perfect shade of blue that had taken 12 samples to get right, were now defaced with crude marker drawings. No, I whispered, my weekend bag dropping from nerveless fingers. No, no, no. I wandered through the wreckage like a shell-shocked survivor, each new discovery worse than the last. In the kitchen, the refrigerator door hung open, contents spilled across the floor in congealing puddles. My collection of handmade mugs, 20 years of travel souvenirs and gifts from colleagues, lay in fragments across the counter and floor. I'd built this place item by item, memory by memory, since my divorce at 32. Every piece represented hours at my desk, weekends sacrificed to manuscripts, holidays spent editing while others celebrated. This cabin was the physical manifestation of my independence, my professional success as an editor, my proof that I had made it on my own terms. And now it was destroyed. Flashback the family pattern. As I stood amid the destruction, a memory surfaced. Thomas at 12, breaking my high school graduation trophy because I'd refused to let him borrow my car. Mother soothing him while admonishing me to be more understanding of my brother. He's just a boy, Elaine. Boys will be boys. But Thomas wasn't a boy anymore. He was 48 years old, twice divorced, perpetually between jobs, and still receiving monthly loans from our parents' retirement fund. I remember Dad's voice on my 35th birthday. Your brother's going through a rough patch with this second divorce. We had to help him with the lawyer fees, so we can't contribute to your down payment like we promised. You understand, right? You're doing so well. You don't really need our help. I had nodded, swallowed my disappointment, and later signed the mortgage papers alone. 20 years of the same pattern, and here I was again, standing amid the wreckage of something I loved, expected to understand, to forgive, to subsidize Thomas's latest escapade. I picked up a shard of ceramic, the remains of the mug I'd bought in Kyoto when my first edited book hit the bestseller list. Something inside me hardened, like metal subjected to sudden cold. Enough. The evidence. The security camera I'd installed last year after a break-in scare had captured everything. My hands trembled as I watched the footage on my phone. Thomas, grinning like a fool, fumbling with the spare key I'd given our parents for emergencies. Behind him, a group of friends, people easily 15 years his junior, carrying cases of beer and bottles of liquor. I fast-forwarded through scenes of increasing destruction. Thomas swinging from the exposed beam I loved. Someone vomiting in my kitchen sink. And then, my blood ran cold. Thomas deliberately picking up my framed Maddie's print, a limited edition I'd saved for a year to purchase, and hurling it like a frisbee across the room while his friends cheered. The final clip showed Thomas pausing at the door the next morning, looking directly at the camera, smirking, then sticking a note to the refrigerator. I returned to the kitchen, stepping over broken glass to see what he'd written. There, on a crumpled napkin in his familiar scrawl, "Chill out. Chill out." As if I were the unreasonable one. As if my sanctuary hadn't just been violated, my possessions deliberately destroyed. I pulled out my phone and called Thomas. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice thick with sleep though it was nearly noon. "Yo, sis. What's up?" "I'm at the lake house, Thomas." My voice was deceptively calm, like the air before a thunderstorm. "Oh, that." He yawned audibly. "Got a bit out of hand. We'll clean up next time." "Next time?" The words escaped as a whisper. "There won't be a next time. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Jesus, Elaine, chill out." The same words from his note. "It's just stuff. You can afford to replace it." What's the big deal? Flashback after my divorce. I remembered the day I signed my divorce papers. I was 32, suddenly single after Daniel had left me for his research assistant. Mother had patted my hand and said, "Well, dear, perhaps if you hadn't been so focused on your career." That night, Thomas had called, asking if he could borrow $2,000 for rent. He was 35, his first marriage already failing, working sporadically at best. Just until I figured things out, he'd promised. I'd transferred the money, despite having just taken on all the debt from my marriage. I never saw a penny back. It was the start of a pattern that would continue for more than 20 years. Thomas in need. Me stepping in. Our parents encouraging it, praising my generosity, my understanding, my success that made such generosity possible. "You've always been the strong one," they'd say. The responsible one. The self-sufficient one. Staring at the destruction around me, another memory arose. My therapist's words from 6 months ago, during a session about my retirement planning. "Elaine, at what point will you stop subsidizing your brother's irresponsibility? You're 55, and you've put off your own dreams for years to bail him out." I'd been defensive, talking about family obligation, about being fortunate enough to afford helping him. But she'd seen through it. Is it really about helping him? Or is it about avoiding the conflict that would come with saying no? The call to parents. I dialed my mother's number. Martha Martin answered with her usual breezy. "Elaine, dear, are you calling about Thanksgiving plans?" I was thinking we could. "I'm at the lake house, Mother," I interrupted, the formal address already signaling trouble. I rarely called her Mother unless I was truly upset. "Oh, is everything all right?" "No, everything is very much not all right. Thomas had a party here. The place is destroyed." A pause. "Well, I'm sure it's not that bad. You know how you can be dramatic. The sofa is slashed open. The walls are vandalized. My Maddie's print is shattered. My antique coffee table is split in half." I kept my tone clinically factual, something I'd learned in 25 years of publishing negotiations. "Oh, Thomas," she sighed, that familiar note of fond exasperation in her voice. "Boys will be boys, Elaine. He's 48 years old." My voice was flat. "This isn't boys will be boys. This is criminal vandalism." And he left me a note saying, "Chill out." I heard my father in the background asking what was wrong. Mother briefly explained, then returned to me. Well, I'm sure your insurance will cover it. That's what insurance is for. We'll have a word with Thomas, don't worry. My hands gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. Insurance doesn't cover intentional damage by family members. There's a deductible, and my premiums would increase. Not to mention the sentimental value of things that are irreplaceable. Oh, sentiment, she dismissed, and I could almost see her waving her hand. Don't make such a big deal, Elaine. You've always been so materialistic. Materialistic. The accusation stung. I'd worked 60-hour weeks for decades, delayed having children until it was too late, all to build my career and financial security. I'd furnished this cabin with pieces that meant something, not to show off, but to create a sanctuary for myself after years of giving to everyone else. He needs to pay for this, I said, my voice steely. Be reasonable, Mother replied, sliding into her martyred tone. You know Thomas doesn't have that kind of money. He's still getting back on his feet. Besides, you can afford it. It will probably be a tax write-off for you. My father came on the line. Your mother's right. Family helps each other out, Elaine. Family helps each other out. The same line I'd heard 100 times when they needed me to send Thomas money, lend him my car, let him stay at my apartment, or any of the countless other times I'd been expected to bail him out. I looked at the note on the fridge, the chill out still mocking me. Something in me finally snapped, not into pieces, but into place. You're right, I said, my voice oddly calm. Family does help each other out. I could hear their relief through the phone. I'll take care of it, I said. That's our girl, Mother chirped. We knew you'd understand. I'll be in touch, I replied, ending the call. They had no idea what was coming. The resolution forms. The drive back to my apartment in the city passed in a blur of simmering resolve. Mother's voice echoed in my head. You can afford it. Yes, I could afford to fix the damage. I could also afford a good lawyer. At home, I called Judith Williams, my best friend and colleague of 20 years. You're not going to believe this, I began, and proceeded to tell her everything. They expect you to just absorb this? Again? Judith's indignation was validating. After everything you've done for them? For him? Apparently. Not this time, she declared. This time you teach them a lesson they'll never forget. The next day, I drove back to the lake house with my professional camera and spent 3 hours documenting every piece of damage in forensic detail. I photographed the slashed sofa, the broken table, the vandalized walls. I took video of the destruction, narrating each item's value and sentimental significance. Back in the city, I printed screenshots from the security footage, Thomas mid-destruction, his friends participating, the clear evidence of deliberate vandalism. I called James Barnes, a lawyer I'd worked with on several publishing contracts. I need to send a formal demand for damages, I explained, outlining the situation. Family, he sighed, shaking his head. Can't live with him. Can't legally lock them in the shed. With his help, I drafted 2 identical packages. A formal demand letter detailing the damages, an itemized bill with photographs and estimates for repairs, and a no-contact policy stating that Thomas, Martha, and Richard were banned from all my properties effective immediately. The total came to just over $15,000. Standing in the post office, sending the certified letters with return receipt requested, I felt something I hadn't expected, not satisfaction, not anger, but a profound sense of peace. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't absorbing Thomas's mess or my parents' expectations. I was setting a boundary and enforcing it. Flashback Mother's lessons. Growing up, Mother had one cardinal rule: family comes first, but some family comes before others. Thomas, her only son, was the center of her universe. He's sensitive, she would say. He needs more support. You're so capable, Elaine. You understand, don't you? I did understand, in the way children understand the unspoken rules of their families. I understood that my achievements were expected, while Thomas's were celebrated. I understood that my needs could wait, while his were urgent. Father, an engineer who spent much of my childhood working late, deferred to mother in all family matters. Your mother knows best, he'd say whenever I appealed to him. Let's not upset her. At 16, when I won a prestigious writing contest, mother's response was measured. That's nice, dear. Did you help Thomas with his science project? He's really struggling. Thomas was 13, and no, I hadn't helped him. I'd been busy writing my contest entry after school, between 8 classes and the yearbook committee I chaired. That night, I'd helped Thomas with his project, staying up until 2 a.m. to finish it while he played video games in the next room. He got a B+ and took full credit. See? Mother had beamed. You helped him shine. It was a pattern that would follow us into adulthood. Through college, I had scholarships. Thomas needed tuition money. Through my first job, my paychecks helping Thomas through his 5th change of major. Through my 30s, my wedding budget suddenly diverted to Thomas's legal troubles. Each time I'd swallowed my resentment, reminding myself that I was lucky, lucky to be capable, lucky to be successful, lucky to be able to help. Each time, a little piece of my authentic self had been buried beneath the weight of family expectation. Now, at 55, walking out of the post office with my certified mail receipts, I felt those buried pieces of myself beginning to resurface. The family response. 2 days later, delivery confirmations appeared in my email. One for Thomas, one for my parents. I imagined the scene at each house, mother opening the thick envelope, expecting a letter of apology from me, perhaps, or at worst a token bill for cleaning. Instead, $15,000 in damages, legal language about restitution, and a formal ban for my properties. I could picture her face paling, her hand flying to her throat in that dramatic gesture she'd perfected over 7 decades. Richard, come look at this. Father, ever the practical one when it suited him, would review the paperwork with growing concern, his engineer's mind calculating the financial impact, weighing options, looking for escape clauses that weren't there. At Thomas's apartment, the one with rent perpetually in arrears despite his good job prospects, I imagined him ripping open the envelope carelessly, expecting the usual lecture he could easily dismiss. The sheer volume of paper would surprise him. He'd scan the bill, eyes widening at the total, then narrow in defiance. My phone rang. Mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then Father. Then Thomas. I listened to Mother's message. Elaine. What is the meaning of this? This ridiculous document. How dare you? After everything we've done for you. Your own brother. This is beyond unacceptable. Delete. The text started flooding in. Mother. Call me immediately. This is outrageous. Father. Elaine, we need to discuss this. This isn't the way. Thomas. WTF, are you serious? You can't do this to me. Thomas. Mom and Dad are freaking out, call them. I read them with a strange detachment. Their panic contrasted sharply with the peaceful quiet of my apartment. They were reacting exactly as I'd anticipated, outraged that the reliable safety net had suddenly developed a spine. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at my desk, looking over the manuscript I was editing. For the first time in years, I felt centered, focused, present in my own life rather than managing theirs. Flashback at the retreat. I'd bought the lake property 15 years ago, after my divorce from Daniel. I was 40, determined to create a life on my own terms. The cabin had been nearly derelict then, a fixer-upper with good bones and a glorious view of the water. It's a money pit, Mother had warned. Besides, it's so far from us. And from Thomas. What if he needs you? I'd bought it anyway, the first major decision I'd made without seeking their approval. Weekend by weekend, I'd restored it, learning skills I never knew I had. Basic plumbing, wall repair, furniture refinishing. I'd painted each room myself, selected every piece of furniture with care, created a space that reflected who I was rather than who others needed me to be. I named it The Retreat because that's what it represented, a retreat from demands, from expectations, from the constant pressure to be the responsible one, the giver, the fixer. Thomas had visited exactly twice in 15 years. Both times he'd complained about the lack of nightlife, the spotty cell service, the absence of a big screen TV. Both times he'd left early, bored. It's so like you, he'd said the last time, 3 years ago. All books and quiet. No fun. I hadn't invited him back. My parents had visited once, stayed 2 hours, and left with a litany of suggestions for improvements that would make the place more appealing for the whole family. I hadn't invited them back either. The retreat had become my sanctuary, the one place I could truly be myself without apology or explanation. And that, I realize now, was precisely why Thomas had violated it so thoroughly. It represented an aspect of me that existed outside the family narrative, a version of Elaine that wasn't defined by her relation to them. The escalation. The barrage of calls and texts continued for days, evolving from outrage to manipulation. Elaine, honey, it's mother. I just don't understand how you could do this to your family. To us. We love you. This isn't like you at all. Are you? Are you okay? Is something else bothering you? You can talk to us. As if I were the one with the problem. Elaine, it's Dad. Your mother is very upset. Thomas is beside himself. This bill, it's just not feasible. And this policy, it's tearing the family apart. Think about the upcoming holidays. Think about tradition. Tradition. Yes, the tradition of me sacrificing my needs for theirs, of Thomas being absolved of all responsibility, of mother orchestrating our family roles with the precision of a conductor who already knows exactly how this symphony should sound. Thomas's messages were less sophisticated, alternating between anger and self-pity. You're ruining my life. I said I was sorry. What more do you want? I didn't respond to any of them. My silence seemed to infuriate them more than any argument could have. A week later, my Aunt Carol, mother's younger sister, called. Elaine, darling, your mother is beside herself. She called me in tears. This is all just a misunderstanding, surely? Thomas made a mistake, but he's your brother. Family forgives. Your mother says you're not even taking her calls. That's not like you, sweetheart. I'd always liked Aunt Carol, but she'd always been firmly in mother's camp, the peacemaker who believed that harmony, even false harmony, was preferable to honest conflict. Aunt Carol, I replied by text. This matter is between me, Thomas, and my parents. My terms are clear and non-negotiable. Her response was immediate. But Elaine, family is more important than money or houses. Your mother is beside herself. Surely you can bend a little. I didn't reply. Bending a little was how I'd ended up here in the first place. The social media manipulation. Judith forwarded me a screenshot from a family social media group I'd long forgotten I was part of. Thomas had posted, "So disappointed in some family members who care more about stuff than people. I made a mistake and apologized, but now I'm being treated like a criminal and banned from seeing my own family just 'cause she's rich and can bully everyone. Some people have no heart." Hash family drama, hash materialistic, hash sad. Several distant cousins had commented sympathetically. Oh, Thomas, that's awful. Some people forget where they came from. Family should always come first. So sorry you're going through this. She always was uptight. Remember that Christmas when she wouldn't let anyone touch her books? That Christmas. I'd been 16, and Thomas, then 13, had deliberately poured soda on my signed first edition of Jane Eyre, a gift from my English teacher. I'd cried, and Mother had said I was overreacting. It's just a book, Elaine. Don't be so materialistic. Now, reading the comments, a cold fury settled in my chest. Thomas hadn't just trashed my retreat and refused responsibility. He was actively painting me as the villain, the cold, materialistic sister bullying her poor brother. He really wants to play dirty, I muttered, taking screenshots of my own. If Thomas wanted to air our dirty laundry, I had an entire archive of evidence he couldn't begin to imagine. The security footage, the photos of destruction, his chill-out note, my parents' dismissive responses. I didn't post anything publicly, but I did send a private message to Linda Morris, my level-headed cousin who'd always been fair. Linda, I know you've probably seen Thomas's post. Before you form an opinion, I wanted to share what actually happened. I attached a short video compilation of the security footage, photos of the damage, and screenshots of Thomas's non-apology. Oh my God, Elaine, she replied almost immediately. I had no idea. This is so much worse than you made it sound. I'm so sorry this happened to you. One by one, I sent similar messages to key family members, not everyone, just those whose opinions I respected. I wasn't trying to win a popularity contest. I was establishing the truth. Thanksgiving approaches. As October turned to November, thoughts of Thanksgiving began to surface. Traditionally, the holiday was a production at my parents' home, with mother orchestrating every detail to present the image of the perfect family. I was always expected to contribute significantly, bringing expensive wines, elaborate side dishes, and often hosting pre-dinner drinks at my apartment for out-of-town relatives. Mother would hint, and sometimes outright state, that since I didn't have a husband or children to care for, I naturally had more time and resources to devote to family gatherings. This year, however, the dynamics had shifted. The bill for damages remained unpaid. My no-contact policy remained in effect. After the initial flurry of calls and manipulative messages, a strange silence had descended from my parents and Thomas, the kind of silence that precedes a storm. Then came the indirect pressure. Aunt Carol called again, her voice strained. Elaine, your mother is trying to plan Thanksgiving, and she's just at a loss. She doesn't know what to do about you. Surely you're not going to let this ruin Thanksgiving for everyone? My plans for Thanksgiving are my own, I replied calmly. The situation with my parents and Thomas is separate. They have the bill, and they have the policy. Nothing has changed. But it's Thanksgiving, she exclaimed, as if the holiday itself possessed magical powers of absolution. A few days later, an email from Mother appeared in my inbox. Subject: Thanksgiving plans. It outlined the usual details for dinner at their house, then added, Elaine, we'll need you to bring your cranberry orange relish and those deviled eggs everyone loves. Perhaps you could host pre-dinner cocktails at your apartment around 1 o'clock? It would be lovely to see you and clear the air. We need to put all this unpleasantness behind us and come together as a family. No mention of the bill. No acknowledgement of the no-contact policy. It was as if my registered letters, the photographs, the legal language had all been a figment of my imagination, a temporary tantrum they were benevolently willing to overlook if I would just come to my senses. I showed the email to Judith over coffee. She shook her head in disbelief. They're living in a completely different reality, aren't they? Clear the air? The air is crystal clear, Elaine. You've made your position perfectly plain. What should I do? Make your own Thanksgiving plans, she suggested, her eyes sparkling. My place, your place, fancy takeout, sweatpants, the world is our oyster. The idea was immediately appealing. A Thanksgiving without forced smiles, without Mother's subtle digs, without Thomas's entitled presence. It sounded like peace. My place, I decided. We'll order from that Indian restaurant we love and watch terrible movies all day. I didn't reply to Mother's email. My silence was my answer. A week later came another email, this time from Father. Subject: Thanksgiving contributions. Elaine, your mother is getting anxious about the arrangements. We'll be by your place on Thursday morning around 10 o'clock to pick up your contributions for Thanksgiving dinner, and we can all talk then like a normal family. This has gone on long enough. Not a request, a statement. As if they could simply command my compliance, override my clearly stated boundaries through sheer force of will. They were planning to just show up at my apartment, despite my explicit instructions to the contrary. This time I did reply with a single sentence. My policy stands. Any uninvited appearance at my properties will be considered trespassing, and I will act accordingly. The bill for damages remains unpaid. Let them try. I was ready. Thanksgiving morning. Thanksgiving dawned clear and cold. Instead of the usual frantic preparation of side dishes and desserts, my apartment was an oasis of calm. The rich aroma of coffee filled the air, and Judith was already there, curled up on my sofa in fuzzy socks, scrolling through movie options for our marathon. What about the holiday? She suggested. Nothing says Thanksgiving like watching Cameron Diaz avoid her family by fleeing to another country. I laughed. Perfect. At precisely 10:05, my apartment buzzer sounded, not the polite, brief buzz of a delivery person, but a long, insistent, demanding blare. Judith raised an eyebrow. Showtime? Looks like it. A strange calm settled over me as I picked up my phone, set it to record video, and went to the intercom. Yes, Elaine, it's us. Open the door. Mother's voice, sharp and impatient. I'm afraid I can't do that, I replied evenly. As I stated in my email, uninvited appearances are not welcome. Don't be ridiculous, Elaine. It's Thanksgiving. Father's voice now, attempting to sound reasonable. We're here to pick up your contributions and talk. There are no contributions, I said. And we have nothing further to discuss until the bill for the retreat is settled. Elaine, open this door right now, or I swear, Mother's voice rose. I walked to my apartment door, phone still recording, and looked through the peephole. There they were, Mother, Father, and lurking behind them, Thomas, looking uncomfortable and sullen. I opened the door a crack, the security chain still firmly in place. In my other hand, I held a copy of my no-contact policy and a cease and desist letter James had helped me prepare. What part of uninvited and trespassing was unclear? I asked quietly. Mother pushed against the door, rattling the chain. Don't you take that tone with me, young lady. We are your parents. You will let us in, and we will sort this nonsense out. No, I said firmly. You are not coming in. This is my home. Your presence here, after being explicitly told not to come, constitutes trespassing. Father stepped forward, his voice softening in an attempt to sound reasonable. Elaine, please. Think of your mother. Think of the family. Don't do this. This isn't you. You have a good heart. My good heart has been taken advantage of for years, I replied. And my good heart is telling me to protect my peace. The terms are clear. Pay the bill, respect my boundaries, then maybe we can talk. Until then, you need to leave. Thomas, who had been scowling silently, finally muttered, You're a real, and you're a destructive, entitled man-child who still hasn't paid for thousands of dollars of damage. I cut him off coolly. He actually flinched. Mother's voice rose to a shout that must have carried down the hallway. We know you don't really mean this. You always come through for family. You wouldn't dare turn us away on Thanksgiving. It's unnatural. Just as she reached her crescendo, the door across the hall opened a crack. Mary Johnson, my elderly neighbor, peered out, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. Oh, Elaine dear, she said, her voice clear and caring. I meant to tell you. I was watering my plants on my balcony that Friday, the weekend before last. I saw Martha and Richard here dropping Thomas and a whole carload of his rather rowdy-looking friends off at the end of your lane, the one that goes up to your lake house. I thought it was a bit odd they didn't drive all the way up or stop in themselves, just sort of waved them off. Quite a noisy bunch they were. A stunned silence fell. Mother froze, her mouth open but no sound emerging. Father's face went from stern to a sort of pasty gray. Thomas looked as though he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Mary hadn't just revealed their knowledge of Thomas's party. She'd exposed their active participation in setting it up. They hadn't just enabled Thomas after the fact. They'd facilitated the very destruction they dismissed as youthful exuberance. Well, I said into the silence, my voice calm. That's illuminating. They mumbled a few incoherent excuses about misunderstandings and Mary being confused, but their hearts weren't in it. The irrefutable evidence of their deeper complicity, witnessed by an impartial third party, had deflated their righteous indignation. Defeated, they began to retreat toward the elevator. Thomas shot me one last venomous glare before Father pulled him away. As they shuffled down the hall, I called after them, loud enough for Mary to hear clearly. The bill is still due, interest accruing daily. And by the way, I've shared copies of the security footage, Thomas's social media posts, and this delightful interaction with several family members. Happy Thanksgiving. The elevator doors closed on their stunned faces, and a profound silence descended in the hallway. Mary, still at her door, gave me a small nod of solidarity. They've always been like that, I remember when you moved in 20 years ago, how they expected you to host them whenever they wanted, never considering your schedule. Some people don't understand boundaries until they're forced to. I smiled at her, genuine warmth flooding through me. Thank you, Mary. Would you like to join us for dinner later? We're ordering Indian food and watching terrible movies. That's sweet of you, dear. But I'm having dinner with my daughter's family. Another time, perhaps. She paused. I'm proud of you, Elaine. It's never too late to stand up for yourself. As her door closed, Judith emerged from my apartment, a slow grin spreading across her face. Well, she said, that was more entertaining than any movie we could have picked. Mary Johnson for the win. I should send her flowers, I said, finally releasing a shaky laugh as the adrenaline began to fade. Our Thanksgiving was everything I'd hoped for. Quiet, peaceful, and filled with delicious food and genuine conversation. No passive-aggressive comments, no expectations, no performance of family harmony, just the easy comfort of true friendship. As evening fell, Judith and I clinked our wine glasses in a toast. To boundaries, she said. And to being 55 and finally enforcing them, I added. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in decades. Flashback, first signs of independence. Growing up in the Martin household meant understanding, without ever being told directly, that Thomas's needs always came first. My earliest memory of questioning this was at 7 years old, when my ballet recital was skipped so the family could attend Thomas's t-ball game, even though he spent most of it picking dandelions in the outfield. But you promised, I'd whispered to Mother in the bleachers, still wearing my leotard under my jeans. Elaine, don't be selfish, she hissed. Thomas needs our support. You're naturally confident. He isn't. By high school, I'd internalized the message so completely that I stopped asking for anything at all. I applied to colleges without telling them, secured scholarships on my own, mapped out my future privately. When I was accepted to a prestigious university with a full ride, Mother's response was telling. That's nice, dear, but it's so far away. What about state college? Thomas will be going there in a few years. You could help him adjust. I went anyway, my first real act of independence. The distance of college gave me perspective, showed me that what I had grown up thinking was normal, the constant sacrifice, the dismissal of my needs, wasn't normal at all. Still, old patterns die hard. Even at university, I sent money home when Thomas needed it, edited his papers when he struggled, returned for every holiday to play my assigned role. It took a failed marriage at 32 to really wake me up. Daniel, my ex-husband, had said something brutally honest during one of our last arguments. You don't know how to prioritize yourself, Elaine. You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. I'm tired of competing with your family's demands. He'd been right, though it had taken me years to admit it. Even after the divorce, I continued the pattern with my family, setting boundaries only to let them be trampled, saying no only to later say yes when the pressure mounted. Until now. The fallout, in the days following the Thanksgiving showdown, as Judith dubbed it, the ripple effects spread through my extended family. Linda called me directly. So, Aunt Martha is telling everyone you threw them out on Thanksgiving after they just wanted to talk, and that Mary Johnson is a confused old lady who didn't know what she was seeing. Is that so? I replied calmly. I have a video of the entire interaction, including Mary's perfectly lucid statement, and the security footage from the retreat, and copies of Thomas's social media posts. I've shared these with several family members already. Would you like to see them too? Actually, Uncle David already forwarded something like that, Linda admitted. It's pretty damning, especially the part where Thomas is swinging from your ceiling beam. The family grapevine, it turned out, worked both ways. Once the actual evidence became widely seen, the visual proof of destruction, Thomas's blatant disregard, my parents' complicity confirmed by Mary, and their aggressive behavior at my door, Mother's narrative of the misunderstood son and the cruel, unforgiving daughter began to crumble. The bill, however, remained unpaid. James sent a follow-up letter, more strongly worded this time, hinting at small claims court and the public record that would create. A week later, a certified check arrived in the mail, not from Thomas, of course, but from my parents. It was for the full amount plus the accrued interest. There was no note, no apology, just the check. I deposited it immediately, the satisfaction profound, not just for the money, but for what it represented. Accountability, finally. Flashback, the retreat's birth. When I purchased the lake property after my divorce, it was more than just buying real estate. It was the first time I'd made a major life decision without seeking my family's approval, or more accurately, without allowing their disapproval to sway me. I remember standing on the worn dock that first day, looking out at the water. The cabin behind me was barely habitable. Broken windows, sagging porch, water damage in the kitchen. The realtor had called it a handyman special, a euphemism for total disaster. But I saw its potential. More importantly, I saw my own. At 40, I was starting over in many ways. Senior editor at the publishing house, newly divorced, questioning every choice I'd ever made. The cabin represented a fresh start, a project that was entirely mine, a space where I could define myself outside the roles I'd played for others. Mother had been predictably negative when I told her about the purchase. A lake house? Elaine, be practical. That's for families with children, not for single women your age. Besides, what will you do out there all alone? I'd surprised both of us with my calm response. I'll find out who I am when no one needs anything from me. That first year, I spent every weekend at the retreat, learning to use power tools, replacing rotted boards, painting walls, shopping for furniture that had meaning rather than just function. I planted a small garden, built a bookshelf that was slightly crooked but entirely mine, installed a window seat where I could read and watch the seasons change across the lake. The neighbors, mostly weekend residents like me, became friends. We shared tools, advice, the occasional meal. None of them knew me as Thomas's responsible big sister, or Martha and Richard's capable daughter, or Daniel's ex-wife. To them, I was simply Elaine, the editor who was surprisingly good with a circular saw and made excellent blueberry muffins. Slowly, the retreat became my true home, more so than my city apartment, more so than the house I'd grown up in. It was the place where I could breathe, where the weight of others' expectations lifted, where I could sit in silence without feeling guilty for not being productive. And that, I realized now, was precisely why its destruction had hit me so hard. Thomas hadn't just damaged property. He'd violated the one space where I existed solely for myself. Christmas season. Linda called again in mid-December. Things are really tense in the family, she reported. Aunt Martha is apparently a wreck, not because she's sorry, from what I can tell, but because everyone knows Uncle Richard had to take out a home equity loan to cover the bill you sent. They're not hosting Christmas this year. First time ever. And Thomas? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Total pariah, Linda said bluntly. None of his usual supporters in the family want anything to do with him after seeing what he did. He apparently had some kind of meltdown when he realized no one was bailing him out this time. Word is he's actually had to get a real job, part-time stocking shelves at the grocery store. A faint sadness touched me then, not for the current reality, but for what might have been if Thomas had been held accountable earlier in life, if my parents had loved us both enough to teach us responsibility rather than enabling one and burdening the other. But the sadness was brief, quickly overshadowed by a profound sense of peace. The constant anxiety of waiting for the next demand, the next guilt trip, the next act of disrespect, it was gone. My apartment felt lighter. The retreat, which I was slowly restoring with the money from the check, felt like my sanctuary again. What about you? Linda asked. Will you come to Aunt Carol's for Christmas dinner? She's taken over hosting since Aunt Martha backed out. No, I said gently. I think I need some distance from family gatherings for a while. I'm making new traditions this year. Judith and I spent Christmas Eve at my apartment, sharing a quiet dinner and exchanging thoughtful gifts. On Christmas morning, we volunteered at a local women's shelter, serving breakfast and helping distribute donated presents to the children. In the afternoon, we drove to the retreat, now restored to its former peace, and built a fire in the fireplace. Sitting there, watching the flames dance, I felt a serenity I'd never known before. At 55, I was finally living on my own terms, free from the weight of family obligation that had shaped my every decision for decades. You know, Judith said, sipping her wine. I don't think I've ever seen you this content. I smiled. I don't think I've ever been this content. The resolution. The calls and texts from mother, father, and Thomas eventually stopped altogether. The silence from their corner of the world was no longer ominous, but peaceful, the calm after a storm rather than before one. Through Linda, I heard that mother had tried a few times to rally support, painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter. But the evidence I'd shared had done its work. The family knew the truth now. Occasionally, I felt a twinge of something like grief, not for the relationship I'd lost with my parents and Thomas, but for the relationship I'd never had. The supportive family of my imagination, the brother who could celebrate my successes without resentment, the parents who could see me clearly instead of through the distorting lens of their own needs. But those moments passed quickly, replaced by the growing conviction that I had made the right choice, the only choice that would allow me to move forward with dignity and self-respect. In January, I was promoted to executive editor at the publishing house, a position I'd been quietly working toward for years. The first person I called was Judith. The second was Mary Johnson, who had become a surprising source of wisdom and support. "Congratulations, dear," Mary said warmly. "Not that I'm surprised. You've always been exceptional." "Thank you," I replied, meaning it deeply. "I'm taking myself out to dinner to celebrate. Would you like to join me?" That evening, sitting across from Mary at my favorite restaurant, I realized something important. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who sees you clearly, who supports your boundaries, who celebrates your victories without qualification. "I've been thinking," I told Mary over dessert, "about selling my city apartment and moving to the retreat full-time once I retire in a few years. The commute would be manageable 3 days a week until then." "That sounds wonderful," Mary said, "though I'll miss having you across the hall. You're the only neighbor who doesn't complain about my late-night television." I laughed. "Well, you're the only neighbor who's ever saved me from a family ambush, so I'd say we're even." Epilogue: a 1 year later. The seasons turned, as they always do. Winter melted into spring, spring bloomed into summer, summer faded into fall, and before I knew it, another Thanksgiving approached. This year, there were no anxious emails from mother, no pressure from father, no manipulation from Thomas. The silence was not strained, but simply peaceful. I'd maintained my distance from my immediate family, though I occasionally exchanged messages with Linda and a few other relatives who had respected my boundaries. From them, I learned that Thomas had finally held a job for more than 6 months, some kind of sales position, and had moved to another state. Mother and father had downsized to a smaller house, partly due to the home equity loan they'd taken to pay for Thomas's destruction. I felt no satisfaction in their difficulties, but also no responsibility to fix them. It was, I realized, the natural consequence of decades of choices, theirs and mine. The retreat was fully restored now, more beautiful than before. I'd made a few changes: stronger locks, a more comprehensive security system, and a new piece of art on the wall, a painting by a local artist of a bird taking flight, free and unfettered. Judith and I had planned another Thanksgiving together, this time at the retreat. Mary had accepted my invitation to join us, along with her daughter's family. Linda had tentatively asked if she could come too, bringing her husband David. "Are you sure?" I asked when she called. "Won't mother be upset if you spend Thanksgiving with me instead of her?" "Elaine," Linda said firmly, "I'm 50 years old. It's time I made my own holiday choices too. Besides, after seeing how you stood your ground, well, it inspired me. I've been doing some boundary setting of my own this year." The morning of Thanksgiving, I woke early at the retreat. The lake was misty, the air crisp with approaching winter. I made coffee and carried it out to the dock, wrapped in a warm sweater against the chill. Standing there, watching the sun rise over the water, I felt immense gratitude. Not for family obligation or tradition, but for the courage to break free from unhealthy patterns, for the strength to stand my ground, for the wisdom to create a life that honored my own needs alongside others. At 56, I had finally learned the most important lesson. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of boundaries. And sometimes, the only way to win your peace is to be willing to fight for it, even when the battlefield is your own front door and those on the other side share your blood. I took another sip of coffee, savoring the quiet morning. Later, the cabin would be filled with voices and laughter, with the warmth of genuine connection rather than the tension of enforced harmony. But for now, it was just me, the lake, and the profound contentment of a woman who had finally found her way home to herself. If you're out there dealing with your own Thomases and Marthas, know this. It's never too late to set boundaries, to demand respect, to create a life that reflects your true worth. Your peace is worth fighting for. And the taste of that hard-won peace, it's the sweetest victory of all. Tell me again why it's fair for everyone to help themselves to what's mine. My voice was eerily calm as I stared down at the scattered legal documents on the coffee table. The mahogany surface, polished to a mirror shine, just as Grandma Helen had always kept it, reflected the stunned faces of my family. My mother Eleanor, her perfectly manicured eyebrows arched in disbelief. My Uncle Robert, his facade of charm cracking to reveal the desperation beneath. And my sister Amy, clutching her designer purse like a shield, her Instagram perfect makeup unable to hide her shock. I'm Sarah Williams, and today, after 29 years of quietly nodding and complying, I was finally standing my ground. This guest house, I said, tapping the property deed with my index finger, has been legally mine for 6 years. 6 years during which you all continue to treat it, and me, as family property to be used and discarded at will. Sarah, you're being ridiculous, my mother managed, her voice carrying that familiar note of dismissal that had once made me shrink. But not today. This has always been family property, and your uncle needs. What Uncle Robert needs, I interrupted, something I'd never dared do before, is to stop draining family resources and face consequences for once in his life. Uncle Robert's face flushed red. You ungrateful little. Careful, Jessica warned, her lawyer's briefcase open beside her. Everything said in this room can be entered into record. 6 years of waiting. 6 years of planning. 6 years of being underestimated by the people who should have protected me. And now, watching their faces as they realized I'd outmaneuvered them all, I felt something rise within me, not just triumph, but a bittersweet vindication that tasted like both victory and loss. How did we get here? When did the people who should love you the most become the ones you need protection from? Flashback the morning declaration. It had begun 3 days earlier on a Tuesday morning. Mom had invited me for breakfast, which should have been my first warning sign. Eleanor Williams didn't do family breakfast unless she wanted something. The scent of blueberry muffins filled her kitchen, her specialty, the one she'd always make on birthdays and special occasions. For a fleeting moment, wrapped in that familiar sweet aroma, I felt like a child again, safe and loved. But the comfort vanished as soon as I saw the calculated smile on her face. Sarah, darling, she said, sliding a muffin onto my plate without looking up from her phone. I've been meaning to talk to you about the guest house. My hand paused, coffee cup halfway to my lips. The vanilla creamer I'd added did nothing to calm my suddenly racing heart. What about it? I asked, though I already knew what was coming. 6 years of waiting had given me an almost preternatural sense for when the attack would finally arrive. Robert's going through a difficult time, Mom said, her voice taking on that familiar guilt-inducing tone she perfected over decades. The divorce hit him hard, and now with losing his job at the firm. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting her continue. Family helps family, she concluded, as if reciting a sacred commandment. He'll be moving into the guest house today. I've already given him your spare key. In my mind, I could see Grandma Helen, sitting in her favorite armchair 6 years ago, her hand trembling slightly as she pressed her house key into my palm. This is your sanctuary, Sarah, she'd whispered. I want you to always have it, no matter what they try to take from you. The memory straightened my spine. The guest house isn't available, I said quietly. Mom finally looked up from her phone, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arching in surprise. In her world, my objection was inconceivable. Don't be difficult, Sarah. It's been sitting practically empty since your grandmother died. You barely use it. I bit my tongue, suppressing the urge to tell her how I'd lived there full time for the past 6 years, finding peace in the small sanctuary my grandmother had given me. How the walls still held echoes of Helen's voice, her laugh, the way she'd squeeze my hand and tell me I was stronger than I knew. I live there, I said instead. Full time for the past 6 years. Oh, please. Mom waved her hand dismissively, the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist catching the morning light. It was new, probably another gift from her latest boyfriend, trying to buy his way into our family's perceived wealth. You can move back home. Your old room is still available, though Amy's using it for storage right now. The mention of my younger sister made my jaw clench. Amy, the golden child, who'd gotten a brand new car for her 16th birthday while I got a lecture about being grateful for hand-me-downs. Amy, whose Instagram account portrayed a perfect life of designer clothes and exotic vacations, all funded by grandma's credit cards that she'd borrowed while Helen was too sick to notice. A car door slammed outside. Through the kitchen window, I watched Uncle Robert's beat-up Chrysler pull into the driveway, trailing oil spots on the concrete. Right on cue. I gave him your spare key, Mom said, standing up with an air of finality. He'll start moving in today. I expect you to help him settle in. My hands trembled slightly as I set down my coffee cup. You gave him my key? Don't make this difficult, Sarah. It's what your grandmother would have wanted. I almost laughed at that. If she only knew what Grandma Helen had actually wanted. If she'd bothered to listen during any of those final months instead of planning Amy's graduation party and covering up Robert's latest financial scheme. The front door opened and Robert's booming voice filled the house. Eleanor, where's my favorite sister? He appeared in the doorway, all fake charm and desperate energy. His shirt was wrinkled, and his eyes had that familiar hungry look they got when he was about to ask for something. I'd seen that look as a child, when he'd visit at Christmas only to leave with Grandma's antique silver. I'd seen it as a teenager, when he'd borrow her car and return it with an empty tank. And I'd seen it as an adult, sitting beside Grandma's hospital bed when she discovered her savings account had been drained. There's my niece. He moved to hug me, but I stepped back. Uncle Robert, I said flatly. Now don't look so glum, he chuckled. We're going to be neighbors, just like old times. Remember when I used to stay in the guest house and sneak you candy? What I remembered was him stealing Grandma's jewelry while she was in the hospital. What I remembered was her crying when she discovered her emergency fund had vanished, money she needed for heart medication. I've got some boxes in the car, he said, jingling my spare key. Be a dear and help me unload. My mother beamed at him, then shot me a warning look. Sarah will help, won't you, sweetheart? I stood up slowly, smoothing down my shirt. 6 years of waiting, of careful planning, of quiet documentation. 6 years of playing the good daughter while making sure every legal document was in order. 6 years of watching them all underestimate me, just like they always had. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone. I need to make a call first. To whom? Mom asked sharply. My lawyer. Flashback, the seeds of resistance. There had been a moment, 6 years ago, when everything changed. Not the dramatic confrontation happening now, but a quiet awakening in a hospital room lit only by fluorescent lights and beeping monitors. Grandma Helen, once so strong and vibrant, lay small against the white sheets. Her silver hair, always neatly styled for her former teaching career, spread across the pillow like a faded halo. I held her hand, the hand that had taught me to prune roses cut clean at an angle to let the plant breathe, that had graded thousands of elementary school papers, that had built a life of dignity and independence from her teaching salary. They're vultures, Sarah, she whispered, her voice thin but her blue eyes sharp with clarity. Robert took my emerald pendant, your grandfather's anniversary gift, to me. It's gone. I'll talk to Mom, I promised. We'll get it back. Helen's grip tightened with surprising strength. Your mother won't listen. She never has. She's been cleaning up Robert's messes since they were children. It's a pattern too deep to break. A tear slid down her weathered cheek. I should have protected her better. Should have seen what my husband was doing to her, making her believe that taking care of her brother was her only worth. I'd never heard this before, this explanation for Mom's blind devotion to her catastrophe of a brother. There was family history here I'd never been allowed to see. But I can protect you, Helen continued. The guest house, it's separate from the family estate. I bought it with my teaching pension. It's mine to give, and I'm giving it to you. Grandma, you don't have to. I've already done it. she interrupted, her voice stronger. The papers are signed. The deed is transferred. It's legally yours now. She pulled me closer, her breath smelling of hospital antiseptic. They'll try to take it from you when they find out. Don't you budge. Not an inch. You're stronger than all of them, Sarah, because you see the truth. Later that week, we recorded her video testimony. A month later, I moved into the guest house permanently. 2 months after that, Grandma Helen was gone, but her protection remained in legal documents, in recorded evidence, and in the strength she'd helped me find. I'd spent the following 6 years working as a legal assistant at Morrison and Associates, where my old law school roommate Jessica had become our rising star attorney. Every lunch break, every weekend, I gathered evidence. Bank statements showing Robert's systematic drain on Helen's accounts, property records revealing suspicious transfers, hospice staff testimonies about Helen's mental clarity until the very end. All while playing the role they expected. Compliant, predictable Sarah, always doing what she was told, never making waves. Until today. At the confrontation, the room went silent after I mentioned my lawyer. The jingling of keys in Robert's hand stopped. My mother's smile froze. Your lawyer? She repeated. Yes, I said, my voice steady for the first time that morning. You see, there's something we need to discuss about the ownership of that guest house. Robert laughed nervously. Come on now, don't be dramatic. It's family property. I looked him straight in the eye as I pressed the call button. No, Uncle Robert, it's my property, and you're not moving in. My mother's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. Sarah, what are you talking about? I held up my hand as the phone rang, watching their faces. 6 years of waiting, and finally, the moment had arrived. Hello, Jessica? Yes, they're here now. Could you bring over those documents we discussed? Time to end the charade. The 30 minutes it took Jessica to arrive felt like hours. My mother paced the kitchen, her heels clicking against the tile floor, an expensive nervous habit she developed during her years working at the insurance company, where appearance always trumped substance. Uncle Robert slumped in a chair, trying to look unbothered but checking his phone every few seconds. This is ridiculous, Mom muttered for the third time. Your grandmother left everything to be managed by the family. I have the paperwork. The paperwork you never actually read, I interrupted, because dealing with boring details was beneath you. She stopped pacing. What's that supposed to mean? It means you've been signing whatever Robert put in front of you for 20 years, I said quietly. Did you ever wonder why Grandma stopped trusting you with her finances? Why she started asking me to help instead? A flash of hurt crossed my mother's face, so quick I almost missed it. For a moment, I glimpsed the wounded child beneath the controlling exterior, the little girl who'd learned early that her only value was in protecting her brother, in maintaining the family image no matter the cost. The doorbell rang before she could respond. Jessica stood there in her crisp blazer, leather briefcase in hand. 6 years ago, she'd been my roommate in law school before I dropped out to care for Grandma full-time. Now she was the kind of lawyer who made people nervous just by walking into a room. Her serene confidence was something I'd always envied, and something I was learning to cultivate in myself. Hello, Sarah, she said professionally, then nodded to my mother and uncle. Mrs. Williams, Mr. Gray. Who exactly are you? My mother demanded. Jessica Morrison, representing Ms. Sarah Williams in matters concerning the property at 1542 Maple Street, commonly known as the guest house. Uncle Robert stood up. Listen, there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Jessica said, opening her briefcase. Just facts that some parties weren't aware of. Shall we sit? My mother's face hardened. I don't appreciate this ambush. Funny, I said. That's exactly how I felt this morning when you announced someone else was moving into my house. Jessica spread documents across the kitchen table. 6 years ago, before her death, Helen Williams had this property legally separated from the main estate. She then transferred full ownership to Sarah through private deed. That's impossible, my mother snapped. I handled all of Mom's affairs. No, I corrected her. You delegated all of Mom's affairs to me. Remember? You were too busy planning Amy's graduation party. Uncle Robert leaned forward, squinting at the papers. These could be fake. The county recorder's office disagrees, Jessica said smoothly, sliding forward another document. As does the notary public, the land survey office, and Mrs. Helen Williams herself in this video deposition. My mother's face went pale. Video? I pulled out my tablet and pressed play. Grandma Helen's face filled the screen, her silver hair neatly styled, her blue eyes sharp and clear. I, Helen Williams, being of sound mind, declare this property at 1542 Maple Street to be transferred in full to my granddaughter Sarah Williams. Uncle Robert's chair scraped back. Turn it off. But Grandma's voice continued. I make this decision with full awareness of my family's likely objections. This house represents my personal property, purchased with my teaching pension, separate from the family estate. I choose Sarah as its sole owner because she alone has shown true care for both the property and for me in my final years. The words struck me anew, even though I'd watched this video countless times over the years for reassurance. Each time, I felt Grandma's strength flowing into me. Each time, I renewed my promise to honor her trust. My mother's hands shook as she reached for the papers. Why didn't she tell me? She tried, I said quietly, remembering all those attempts. Multiple times. You always change the subject. But Robert needs to find his own place. I cut in, just like he needed to find his own money instead of draining Grandma's savings account. Uncle Robert's face turned red. That's a lie. Bank statements don't lie, Jessica interjected, producing another folder. Would you like to discuss those too? He grabbed his keys from the table. This is bull. Language my mother snapped automatically, then turned to me. Sarah, you can't do this. He's family. Family? I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. Was it family when he sold Grandma's antique jewelry while she was in the hospital? Was it family when you told me I was being dramatic for reporting it? I never said it. You did. I stood up. The house is mine, legally, formally, and permanently mine. Robert needs to leave now. You'll regret this, he growled, heading for the door. No, I said. I really won't. The aftermath. After they left, Jessica squeezed my shoulder. You okay? I nodded, gathering the documents with shaking hands. Through the window, I watched my mother's car pull away, Uncle Robert's Chrysler following close behind. The confrontation had gone exactly as I'd anticipated, yet I felt strangely hollow. Victory, it seemed, didn't taste as sweet as I'd imagined during those 6 years of waiting. They'll be back, Jessica warned. I know. I tucked the papers into my bag. But I've got something they don't. What's that? Proof. Time. And Grandma's blessing. I headed for the door of my mother's house, then paused. Want to see their faces when they realize I've already changed the locks? Jessica grinned. Lead the way. As we walked across the lawn to the guest house, my house, I thought about the path that had led here. Law school had been my mother's idea, not mine. Lawyers make money, she'd said, as if that was all that mattered. I'd dropped out in my second year, ostensibly to care for Grandma, but truthfully because I'd realized I didn't want to build my life around my mother's expectations. The irony wasn't lost on me that legal knowledge had ultimately given me the power to break free from her control. We'd barely reached the porch when I heard footsteps behind us. My mother stood there, key extended, face tight with anger. We need to talk, she said. I squared my shoulders. 6 years of preparation had led to this moment. Yes, I agreed. We really do. The confrontation continues. That key won't work, I said, watching my mother jiggle the handle. I had the locks changed last week. She spun around, face flushed with a mixture of anger and disbelief. You planned this. All of it. Yes. How dare you? She stepped toward me, finger pointed accusingly. After everything this family has done for you. Done for me? I unlocked the door with my new key, savoring the solid click of the mechanism. Please, elaborate. Jessica stayed close behind me as we entered the guest house. It smelled like fresh coffee and the lavender candles Grandma always loved. Everything was exactly as I kept it, clean, organized, peaceful until now, with my mother's fury disturbing the carefully maintained tranquility. Your uncle is going through a difficult time, my mother started, falling back on her oldest excuse. He's been going through difficult times for 20 years, I interrupted. And somehow, those difficulties always end up being someone else's problem. A car door slammed outside. Amy burst in, designer purse swinging, her perfectly styled hair bouncing with indignation. Mom just called me. What the hell, Sarah? Perfect timing, I said. Family meeting. This isn't funny, Amy snapped. I looked at my younger sister, truly looked at her. Behind the expensive clothes and Instagram-ready appearance was a 24-year-old woman who'd been shaped by the same toxic family dynamics that had nearly broken me. The difference was that while I'd been cast as the responsible one, the dutiful daughter, Amy had been given the role of the golden child, the special one who could do no wrong. Neither position had done us any favors. Uncle Robert needs a job, I suggested. And personal accountability therapy. My mother sank onto the couch, Grandma's couch, like she owned it. You're being cruel. No, I said, pulling out my phone. This is cruel. I played the video I'd taken 6 years ago. Grandma lying in her hospital bed, tears streaming down her face as she discovered her jewelry missing, her voice weak but clear. Robert promised he'd return them. He promised. Amy shifted uncomfortably. That was ages ago. 2 months before she died, I corrected. While you were all too busy to visit, I was there, recording everything. Is that why she left you the house? My mother demanded. Because you manipulated her? The accusation stung more than I wanted to admit. Had I manipulated Grandma? Had my presence during those final months been calculated rather than loving? For a moment, doubt crept in, as it often had during the long years of waiting. Then I remembered the look in Helen's eyes when she handed me the key, not manipulation, but recognition. She'd seen something in me that even I hadn't fully recognized yet. Jessica cleared her throat. I have statements from the hospice staff, Mrs. Williams. They all witnessed your mother's mental clarity and her explicit wishes. This isn't legal, my mother insisted, desperately clinging to denial. Actually, Jessica said, it's ironclad. Would you like to see the property survey again? The deed transfer? The video deposition? Or perhaps the bank statements showing Mr. Gray's systematic withdrawal of your mother's savings? A heavy knock at the door made us all jump. Uncle Robert barged in, waving papers. I called my lawyer. He says, your lawyer can call me directly, Jessica interrupted, handing him her card. Though I should warn you, challenging this will only make public everything else we've documented. He crumpled the card. You little snake. You sat there for years, planning this. Yes, I said simply. I did. Just like you sat there for years, planning how to drain Grandma's accounts. That's different. She needed heart medication. I cut in, the memory still sharp enough to make my voice shake. But she couldn't afford it after you emptied her emergency fund. Amy gasped. What? Oh, you didn't know? I turned to my sister. Ask Mom. She covered it up, wrote it off as a banking error rather than admit her precious brother was stealing from our dying grandmother. My mother stood up sharply. That's enough. No, it's not, I said, my voice rising with years of suppressed emotion. For years, I watched you all take and take. You treated Grandma's house like a hotel, her savings like a personal ATM. And when she needed you most, you were too busy with your own lives to notice she was fading. We loved her, Amy whispered, and I could see genuine pain in her eyes. Love isn't enough, I said, softening my tone slightly. She needed protection from him. I pointed at Uncle Robert. And from you. I looked at my mother. And she trusted me to provide it. By stealing her property, Robert snarled. By honoring her wishes, I corrected. This house was her refuge. Now it's mine. And none of you are welcome here. My mother's face hardened. You'll regret this. Family is all we have. No, I said. Family is what we choose. And I choose to honor Grandma's choice. This isn't over, Robert threatened, heading for the door. Actually, it is, Jessica said. Any further harassment will result in legal action. And trust me, you don't want those documents becoming public record. They left one by one. Robert first, slamming the door. Amy next, unable to meet my eyes. My mother last, pausing at the threshold. You waited for this, she said quietly. You planned this. Yes, I replied, for 6 years. After they were gone, Jessica helped me double check the locks. Through the window, I watched their cars pull away, leaving oil stains on my driveway. You okay? Jessica asked. I touched the wall where Grandma's favorite photo hung, the two of us in her garden, both smiling. I will be. They might try something else, she warned. Let them try, I said. I learned from the best how to play the long game. Outside, the evening sun cast long shadows across my porch. My porch, just like Grandma wanted. The days after, the call started at dawn. Aunt Patricia first, her voice shrill with righteous anger. How could you do this to your own uncle? Your grandmother would be ashamed. I let it go to voicemail. Then came Cousin Mark. You've torn this family apart. Uncle David, your mother is devastated. Each message more dramatic than the last. By noon, my phone had 37 missed calls and 62 text messages. I turned it off and went to water Grandma's roses. Quite the show yesterday, called a voice from next door. Martha, our elderly neighbor, stood at the fence in her gardening hat. She'd lived next door for 40 years and had seen everything. You heard? Honey, the whole street heard, she smiled. About time, if you ask me. I adjusted the sprinkler. Everyone thinks I'm the villain. Everyone thought your grandmother was cruel too. When she finally stood up to your grandfather back in '85, Martha leaned on the fence. Truth's just calmer, with better manners. You did right. A car pulled up to the main house. Amy's red convertible, the one she'd bought with Grandma's credit card while Helen was on morphine. She got out, clutching a stack of papers. Incoming, Martha muttered. Want me to call the police? Not yet, I said, turning off the water. Amy marched across the lawn, her designer heels sinking into the grass. Look what you've done. She thrust her phone in my face. It showed her latest Instagram post, already flooded with comments. My sister's violent takeover of family property, I read aloud. Interesting choice of words. Mom's a wreck, Amy snapped. Uncle Robert had to sleep in his car. He has money for a hotel, I said. Trust me, I've seen the bank statements. You're obsessed. All these years, collecting evidence like some crazy person. All these years, watching you all take advantage of a dying woman, I counted. Amy flinched. That's not fair. I loved Grandma. You loved her credit card, I corrected. The one you borrowed to buy that convertible you're driving. She said I could. She was on morphine, Amy. She couldn't even sign her name. My sister's face crumpled. Why are you being so mean? The question caught me off guard. Was I being mean? Or was I finally being honest after years of silent compliance? Mean, I laughed softly, is watching your grandmother cry because she can't afford her medicine. Mean is ignoring her calls because you're too busy to visit. Mean is letting Uncle Robert steal her blind while pretending everything's fine. I didn't know about that, she whispered, and I believed her. Amy had been just 18 when Grandma died, young, self-absorbed, and deliberately kept in the dark by our mother. You didn't want to know, I said, but with less heat than before. A notification pinged on her phone, another comment on her post. She glanced at it, then at me. Everyone's saying horrible things about you. Let them. The truth has documentation. Mom's talking about legal action. Good luck with that. I turned back to the roses. Jessica's already filed restraining orders against Uncle Robert. One wrong move, and everything goes public. Including the bank records. Everything? There was fear in Amy's voice now. Amy's phone pinged again. This time her face went pale. Brian just commented. My stomach lurched. Brian Turner. My ex-boyfriend who dumped me for being too boring 2 years ago. Always playing it safe, Always doing what your family wants, he'd said. The same Brian who'd apparently been seeing Amy behind my back. What did he say? He wants to know if you're okay. Says he's been thinking about you. Of course he had. Now that I had property and power, suddenly I was interesting again. Tell him to keep thinking, I said. From a distance, Amy tucked her phone away. This isn't over, you know. Mom won't let it go. I know. That's why I have security cameras installed. I pointed to the discrete devices under the eaves. And a police report filed just in case. You really did think of everything. I learned from the best. You all taught me exactly how cruel family can be. She turned to leave, then paused. Did Grandma? Did she ever say anything about me? At the end? The truth caught in my throat. Those final days, when Helen would look at old photos and whisper about regrets, about enabling bad behavior, about loving too much and protecting too little, about how Amy's self-centered attitude reminded her painfully of Robert at that age, and how she feared my sister would follow the same destructive path. She loved you, I said finally. But she was disappointed. Amy's eyes filled with tears. Yeah, I guess she had reason to be. After she left, Martha called over the fence again. You okay, honey? I looked at the roses, their petals bright against the dark soil. Grandma's roses. My roses now. No, I admitted. But I will be. The battle continues. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from an unknown number. I opened it to find a photo of my front door with a message. You think you won, but you'll regret everything. I forwarded it to Jessica, then went inside to check the security cameras. The war wasn't over, but this time I was ready for battle. Brian's message arrived 3 days later. Coffee for old time's sake? I stared at my phone, remembering how he ended things. You're just so predictable, he'd said. Always playing it safe. Always doing what your family wants. I typed back. Starbucks, 2 p.m. Don't be late. He was, of course, 15 minutes late, sliding into the seat across from me with that practiced smile that used to make my heart skip. I noticed how different he looked now. His designer clothes that didn't quite disguise his insecurity, the expensive watch he kept checking, the way his eyes darted around the calf to see who might be watching us. Or perhaps he hadn't changed at all. Maybe I was the one seeing clearly for the first time. You look good, he said, his eyes appraising me with newfound interest. Really good. Amazing what standing up for yourself can do for your complexion, I replied, taking a deliberate sip of my coffee. He laughed too loudly. I saw Amy's post. Pretty intense stuff. Is that why you're here? For drama updates? Can I just want to see you? He reached for my hand across the table. I pulled back. 2 years of silence. And now you're interested? What a coincidence. His smile faltered. I've been thinking about us. About mistakes I made. You mean like dating my cousin behind my back? He choked on his coffee. How did you? Amanda told me last year at the family reunion. Right after you dumped her too. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. Check your mailbox, Snake. Everything okay? Brian asked, leaning forward with manufactured concern. Fine. I stood up. This was a mistake. Sarah? Wait. I turned back at the door. You know what's funny? You said I was predictable. Boring. But you're exactly what I expected. The last glimpse I caught of his face, shocked, offended that someone he discarded would reject him, was oddly satisfying. I drove home quickly, heart pounding. The mailbox was stuffed with papers, printouts of Amy's social media posts, each one covered in red marker. Thief and traitor scrolled across my face in angry capitals. Charming display, said a voice. Martha stood on her porch, watering can in hand. Your uncle's been driving by every few hours, taking pictures. Of course he has. I gathered the papers. Did you see who left these? No, but I got it on camera. She pointed to her doorbell camera. Already sent the footage to that lawyer friend of yours. My phone rang. Jessica. Hey, we need to talk. Your uncle's lawyer just filed something. I'll be right there. I turned to Martha. Thank you for watching out for me. Someone should, she said simply. Your grandmother would be proud. At Jessica's office, the news wasn't good. He's challenging the deed transfer, she explained. Claims Helen was mentally incompetent when she signed. That's ridiculous. We have the hospice records. I know, but it means court testimony. Are you ready for that? I thought of Grandma's voice, preserved in a voicemail I'd never deleted. After another of Robert's loans, she'd call me crying. One moment, I said to Jessica, pulling out my phone. I played the message on speaker. Sarah, baby, I need to tell you something. They'll try to take it from you. When they do, don't you budge. I'm leaving you this house because you're the only one who sees them for what they are, the only one strong enough to stand up to them. Don't let them bully you like they bullied me. I love you, sweetheart. Stay strong. Jessica's eyes widened. When was this? 2 weeks before she died. When she was supposedly incompetent. This changes everything. She started typing frantically. With this and the hospice records, we can file for summary judgment. No trial needed. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Hope you're ready for war. They're not going to stop, I said, a weariness creeping into my voice that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. No, Jessica agreed. But neither are we. Discoveries. The county records office smelled like old paper and stale coffee. I'd spent my lunch break here every day for a week, digging through property records, following a hunch I couldn't shake. Back again? The clerk, Martha, a different Martha, but with the same no-nonsense attitude as my neighbor, smiled knowingly. Found anything interesting? Maybe. I spread out the documents. See these signatures from when Uncle Robert helped manage Grandma's properties? Martha adjusted her glasses. The ones from 2015? Something's off about those. Exactly. I pulled out my phone, showing her photos of Grandma's genuine signature. Look at the difference. Oh, honey. Martha's eyes widened. That's not just off. That's forgery. My hands shook as I made copies. 3 properties sold between 2014 and 2015, all while Grandma was recovering from her first stroke, all signed over to shell companies that traced back to Robert's old business partner. My phone buzzed. Jessica, where are you? Your mother's here in my office. On my way. And Jessica? I found something big. When I arrived, Mom sat rigid in Jessica's office, her perfect posture betraying her anxiety. She'd always been like this, maintaining the appearance of control even when everything was falling apart. It was what her own father had taught her: appearances matter more than reality. I wondered if she ever found freedom from that prison of perception. This has gone far enough, she announced as I walked in. I agree. I dropped the folder of records on the desk. Let's talk about Robert's creative accounting. What? The riverside property. The lake house. The downtown apartment. Ring any bells? Her face paled. Those were legitimate sales, with forged signatures. I spread out the documents. While Grandma was in the hospital. You don't understand. Actually, I do. Robert needed money again, so he forged Grandma's signature, sold her properties to his friends' companies at half their value, and probably got kickbacks. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because I have the original deeds, the sales records, and proof that Grandma was physically incapable of signing anything during those months. Jessica leaned forward. Mrs. Williams, this is serious. We're talking about federal fraud. My mother's hands trembled. Robert said she agreed. He said she needed the money for medical bills. Medical bills that he created by stealing her savings, I said. Did you ever actually ask her? She was sick. She was betrayed. By him. By you. By everyone who looked the other way. I was protecting the family. The words burst from her like they'd been trapped for decades. No. I stood up. You were protecting him. Like always. My mother buried her face in her hands, a gesture of vulnerability I'd never seen from her. For a moment, I glimpsed the weight she'd carried all these years, the impossible choices she thought she had to make. What do you want? She finally asked, her voice barely audible. I want you to stop fighting me on the guest house. Stop the social media attacks. Stop the harassment. Or what? All these records go to the FBI's fraud division. I'm sure they'd love to hear about Robert's creative financing. She looked up sharply. You'd send your own uncle to prison? You mean like you let him send grandma to a cheaper nursing home because he drained her accounts? Silence filled the room. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice barely audible. He said he'd pay it back. Did he? No, she straightened her jacket, another armor adjustment. None of this leaves this room. I'll talk to Robert and Amy. The post will stop today. After she left, Jessica whistled low. That was intense. It's not over, I said. They'll try something else. My phone chimed, a text from Amy. Unji mom just called Robert. He's freaking out. What did you do? Then another message from an unknown number. You think you're smart. Watch your back, Robert? Jessica asked, reading over my shoulder. Probably. He's got the most to lose. Want me to file for a restraining order? Not yet. Let's keep this ace up our sleeve. Driving home, I passed Robert's car parked near the guest house. He sat inside, staring at my front door, phone pressed to his ear. I parked in the driveway and walked straight to his car. He rolled down the window, face red with anger. You little. 3 properties, I interrupted. 3 forged signatures. Want to guess how many years that's worth? He gripped the steering wheel. You're bluffing. Try me. Keep pushing, and these files go public. All of them. Eleanor won't let you. Mom can't stop me. Not anymore. His phone buzzed, probably my mother calling again. We stared at each other through the window, years of resentment crackling between us. Leave, I said quietly. Don't come back. He started his car, engine growling. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Unless you want the FBI involved. I watched him drive away, tires squealing. Inside the house, I played Grandma's voicemail again. Don't let them bully you like they bullied me. I won't, I whispered to her memory. I promise. The final showdown. My phone lit up with a calendar reminder. Court hearing tomorrow, 9 a.m. Robert's lawyer's challenge to the deed. Game on. The courthouse steps were slick with morning rain. Robert and his lawyer waited by the entrance, both in ill-fitting suits that seemed to emphasize their desperation. My mother stood apart from them, scrolling through her phone like this was just another inconvenient appointment. But I noticed how her fingers trembled slightly as she swiped, the only crack in her carefully maintained facade. Ready? Jessica asked, adjusting her briefcase. I thought of Grandma Helen, of the strength in her frail hands as she'd given me her house key, of her voice on the video deposition we were about to play, of the roses I'd pruned yesterday, their stems cut clean to encourage new growth. Born ready. Inside, the hearing room felt smaller than I expected. Robert's lawyer, a nervous man named Peters, shuffled his papers while the judge reviewed our files. Your Honor, Peters began, we contest the validity of this deed transfer on grounds of mental incompetency. Objection. Jessica stood. We have extensive medical documentation proving Mrs. Helen Williams' mental clarity during this period. Beyond medical records, Peters continued, we question the suspicious timing and secretive nature of this transfer. There was nothing suspicious about it, I said clearly. Grandma made her wishes known multiple times. The judge peered over his glasses. Do you have evidence of these wishes? Yes, Your Honor. Jessica approached with a laptop. We have video testimony. My mother's head snapped up. Robert shifted in his seat. The video played. Grandma sitting in her favorite chair, looking directly at the camera. I'm recording this because I know what's coming. My son-in-law tried to challenge my will once before, and my own brother contested my inheritance. Now I'm protecting what's mine. Robert's lawyer started to speak, but the judge held up his hand. Grandma continued, this guest house was bought with my teaching pension, my money, not family money. I'm giving it to Sarah because she's the only one who sees the truth, the only one who tried to stop the stealing, the manipulation, the lies. My mother's face went white. I'm of sound mind. Grandma's voice grew stronger. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I know they'll try to fight it. That's why I'm leaving this video. That's why I had 3 doctors certify my competency. That's why I'm doing this now, while I still can. The video ended. Silence filled the room. Your Honor, Peters tried again. Regardless of mental state, this transfer was done without family knowledge. Because the family was the threat, Jessica interrupted. As evidenced by these bank records showing systematic theft from Mrs. Williams' accounts. She produced the documents I'd found. Additionally, we have evidence of multiple fraudulent property transfers orchestrated by the plaintiff, Mr. Robert Gray, during this same period. Robert stood up suddenly. This is irrelevant. Sit down, Mr. Gray, the judge ordered. Ms. Morrison, continue. The guest house transfer was legal, documented, and witnessed. The plaintiff's challenge is not only baseless but appears to be part of a pattern of financial exploitation. That's a lie, Robert shouted. Mr. Gray, the judge warned. One more outburst and you'll be removed. Peters whispered urgently to Robert, who sank back into his chair, face red. Having reviewed all submitted evidence, the judge said, I find no basis for this challenge. The deed transfer stands. Case dismissed. Robert stormed out before the judge finished speaking. My mother stayed seated, staring at her hands. Mom? I approached her slowly. All this time, she whispered. You were protecting her. Someone had to, I should have. She trailed off, then stood abruptly. I need to go. Outside, Jessica hugged me. Congratulations. It's really over. Is it? Legally, yes. Emotionally. She shrugged. That's up to you. I watched my mother walk to her car alone. No Robert in sight, no Amy. Just a woman realizing how much she'd chosen not to see. Miss Williams? A court clerk hurried over. This was in with your grandmother's filed documents. It's marked personal. The envelope was old, Grandma's handwriting shaky but clear, for Sarah, after the fight. Inside was a single photo and a note. The photo showed Grandma and me on the guest house porch, both laughing at something long forgotten. The note read, My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, you've done what I never could, stood your ground. The house is yours now, truly and finally. Use it well. Fill it with the love and strength they tried to take from us both. They'll call you cruel, selfish, wrong. But standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. I'm so proud of you, my brave girl. All my love, Grandma. A shadow fell across the paper. Amy stood there, mascara perfect this time. Is it true? She asked. About Robert stealing? Yes. And Mom knew. She chose not to know. There's a difference. Amy nodded slowly. The house. It was always meant for you, wasn't it? Yes. You'll be alone there. I'll be free there, I corrected. There's a difference in that too. She turned to leave, then paused. Take care of her roses, okay? I always have. I watched my sister walk away, her heels clicking on the wet pavement. In my hand, Grandma's photo caught the morning light. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. Finally, completely, the house was mine. Epilogue and new growth. The autumn wind scattered leaves across my porch as I pruned Grandma's roses. They'd bloomed late this year, defiant splashes of red against the cooling air. Mail's here. Martha called from her yard. Want me to grab yours? Please. I'd given her a spare key to my mailbox after the harassment stopped. Old habits die hard. She shuffled through the envelopes. Bill. Advertisement. Oh, something from your mother. My hand stilled on the rose bush. Mom hadn't contacted me since the courthouse. 3 weeks of silence. Want me to toss it? No. I wiped my hands on my jeans. I'll take it. The envelope was heavy, expensive stationery. Inside was a key, the old one to the guest house, and a letter. Sarah, I found this in Robert's things. He's gone, moved to Florida without telling anyone. Amy tracked him through social media. He's working at a car dealership, claiming he's starting fresh. I've been thinking about what your grandmother said in that video about seeing the truth. I didn't want to see it. It was easier to believe Robert's excuses, to dismiss your concerns, to pretend everything was fine. I failed her. I failed you. The house was always meant for you. You were always meant for more than we allowed you to be. I'm sorry, Mom. My phone buzzed. A text from Brian. Miss you. Coffee sometime? Delete. Another text came through from Amy. Mom showed me the bank records. All of them. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I started typing, deleted it, started again. I know. Can we talk? Actually talk? The roses needed finishing. The gutters needed cleaning. The porch needed sweeping. All the little tasks of home ownership that Grandma had taught me to love. Not yet, I replied. But maybe soon. Martha appeared at the fence again. Everything okay? Getting there. I showed her the letter. Mom apologized. Miracles never cease. She smiled. Your grandmother would be proud, you know. Not just of the house, of you. Standing tall, like her roses. I touched a bloom. Beautiful, but thorny. Speaking of thorny, Martha nodded toward the street. A familiar car was approaching, my mother's. She parked but didn't get out immediately, just sat there staring at the guest house like she was seeing it for the first time. Finally, she stepped out, carrying a box. Hi, she said tentatively. I found these. She set the box down. Documents, things your grandmother kept. I thought you should have them. I opened the box. On top was a photograph I'd never seen, Grandma as a young woman, standing proud in front of a classroom, her first year teaching. She was stronger than any of us, Mom said quietly. Like you. You could have been strong too, I replied. You could have stopped him. I know. She touched one of the roses gently. Is it too late to try? The wind picked up, sending more leaves dancing across the yard. Somewhere in the distance, a wind chime rang, the one Grandma had hung years ago. That depends, I said. Are you ready to see the truth? All of it? Yes. She met my eyes. Even the parts that hurt. I picked up my gardening shears. Want to learn how to prune roses? She stared at the shears, then at me. Understanding flickered across her face. This wasn't just about flowers. Yes, she said. Show me. I demonstrated the technique Grandma had taught me. You have to be careful but firm. Cut at an angle. Make clean breaks. Mom's hands shook slightly as she tried. Like this? Almost. I adjusted her grip. You have to mean it. Hesitation only makes it messier. We worked in silence for a while, the roses gradually taking shape under our hands. Clean breaks. Fresh starts. Room to grow. Robert called, she said finally. Wanted money. And I told him no. For the first time ever, I just said no. I nodded, trimming another branch. Good. Will you tell me about her? Mom asked. About the grandmother I didn't see? I looked at the guest house, my house, with its warm lights and solid walls. The home Grandma had created, that I'd protected, that stood as testament to both our strengths. Yes, I said. But first, you need to learn about roses. How they grow stronger after every pruning. How they survive winter. How they bloom again if you're brave enough to cut away the dead parts. Mom smiled slightly, understanding. I'm ready to learn. The wind chime rang again, clearer this time. Like laughter. Like forgiveness. Like the sound of truth finally breaking free. They wanted me gone. Now they're the ones who left. Funny how justice doesn't always come with applause, but it always comes.